or goals being made possible only by the cross of Christ, whose merits must be appropriated by faith for man to be reconciled with his Creator. And all of that is the deposit of the new birth, the Spirit, present in this temple, this most holy place. 2 Corinthians 5:19, Colossians 1:20 and 21, 1 Peter 3:18, and achieve his highest potential for which he was created. So we appropriate we appropriate faith, and the new birth is delivered to us. Faith whose object is the Lord Jesus Christ. The merits of Christ again added to us. Sins removed. We're justified. We're redeemed. We're reconciled. All these great words of the new Christian life. Ecclesiastes 12 and verse 13. And what is the goal? The writer says, let's hear the conclusion of this whole thing. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man, or this is what it is to be human, to be reconciled to God. John 1 and 12, John 3:36, John 10:10, John 17 and verse 3. Remember this, and this is life eternal, that they might know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ, who you have sent. So the destiny of man then, where am I going? Where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? So the end is just the beginning, in other words. It must be understood that man's being is a composite unity, described as a living soul, Genesis chapter 2 and verse 7. Yet the dissolution of his being will occur at death, where the material and the immaterial components of his nature are being separated. So death is a separation. To be born once is to die twice, but to be born twice is to die once. So what does that mean? If you're only born once, born of this world, then you face not only physical death, but or separation of the body and soul, the material and the immaterial, but you then, by virtue of not being in a right relationship with God, not being reconciled to God through the merits of the Lord Jesus Christ, appropriated by faith in salvation. If none of that has occurred, then you're born once, you'll die twice. The second death is then separation of the soul from God forever. What a horrific thing. But to be born twice, physically, of this world, and that to be born genothai anathen, to be reborn from above, a spiritual rebirth, to have that connection reestablished between yourself and God, to be alive from the dead, born dead in trespasses and sins, but now having been made alive by God through Christ. If that's who you are, then there is just physical death. Born twice, die once. So it's important to understand, you have Ecclesiastes chapter 12, 7, until the point of resurrection where this body is reunited, a changed body. We shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed in the moment, in the twinkling of an eye, in the last trump, 1 Thessalonians 4. I mean trumpet. 1 Thessalonians, not to confuse that with our former president. So 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. So the believer who is alive at the coming of the Lord for his bride will be translated, will be caught up together to meet him in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verses 22 and 23, 51 and 50 through 57, also 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, 16 and 17. So the guiding destiny of man is either to experience the bliss of an everlasting existence with God in heaven, or the torment of an everlasting existence apart from God in hell. Daniel chapter 12 and verse 2, John chapter 5 and verse 29, the resurrection of the righteous and the resurrection of the unrighteous, right? So it's just important to distinguish between these two things and these two destinies. So where am I going? Well, that depends on what you do with the Lord Jesus Christ in this life. Then death does not result in cessation of existence. We're not annihilated, but a continuation of existence. The Bible teaches that the righteous upon death go into the presence of the Lord in heaven. That's Luke chapter 23, verse 23, 2 Corinthians chapter 5 and verse 8, Philippians chapter 1 and verse 23. But on the other hand, the unrighteous upon death go into everlasting torment. Initially, Hades, the underworld, or Sheol is what it's called in the Hebrew, then ultimately in Gehenna, hell, or the lake of fire. Gehenna was this region called the Valley of Hinnom, outside of the city of Jerusalem, where they would burn all of their refuse. And so it became a word that meant like ceaseless fire, endless burning, and the smoke rising from that. So the final consignment of this being placed in the lake of fire is the great white throne judgment. Matthew chapter 25 and verse 46, 2 Thessalonians chapter 1 and verse 9, Mark chapter 9, 44 to 49, Revelation chapter 20, 11 through 15. So the righteous await the bema, to receive their crown or their victor's wreath. This is what the righteous await. What's called the judgment seat of Christ, 2 Corinthians chapter 5:10, which is a place of reward, or a place to discover a loss of reward, but not a loss of salvation, 1 Corinthians 3:10 through 15. So we're encouraged in 1 Corinthians to be mindful of how you live. And Paul likens it to wood, hay, and stubble, gold, silver, or precious stone. And this Paul being in Corinth about 100 years after the city was attacked and besieged and destroyed, and people had rebuilt or attempted to rebuild some of those great marbled columns and all of that Ionic architecture that you see that's so consistent with that period in that era. And yet a lot of people, they didn't have the money. It'd be like purchasing a home. We have some here locally, let's say in Gloversville on Kingsborough Avenue, with the beautiful, beautiful homes, but the economy being what it is, people buy them and they can't keep them up. They can't keep them to the standard that once was in the glory days. And so Paul, 100 years after the effect, people had gone in with wood, hay, and perishable stuff to fabricate probably some type of mortar and brick and mortar type of thing, which isn't marble, which isn't that beauty of what it once was. And so he said it should be gold, silver, precious stone. And he says, listen, you have this choice. You've been made for more. You have been made for this higher affection, and yet you're just settling for the lower affections. You're settling for the wood, hay, and stubble, the inferior, instead of the gold, silver, precious stone, the superior things. So I think it's self-explanatory, all that we go through with regard to man. But I think the most important from this is that higher affection, lower affection. How do you live as you being that soulish person in the middle, the I that is you, the I that is me? What is our orientation on balance? Do we live in this world by drawing from all the resources of heaven to live as we should in this world, to be shining lights and witnesses for the Lord Jesus? So God bless you, and keep working on those worldview questions.